Welcome to another edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast. Bubba, you and I, my brother, for 28, almost 29 years now.
How about those numbers?
We have made it very clear that we love food. We appreciate great food. I know that if you took a gander at us, you'd go, well, tell you what, it didn't take me long to figure that out.
Sure.
You don't have to.
They're both missing their gallbladder.
Yeah,
There's a reason for that.
You don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to say, I bet those two know a thing or two about food. So when we heard that Fox and Friends is Steve Doocy, some of you know him as Peter's dad. When we heard that
the deuce is loose,
he and his wife were creating cookbooks. He knew that this was a relationship that was made in heaven, that if there was anybody that could talk ad nauseum about delicious food, it would be us. So please welcome to Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, fellow foodie Steve Doocy. Deuce?
Hello, Rick and Bubba, from Doocy World Headquarters here outside New York City in my bunker. It's great to be with you today.
Oh, and look, you've even got the little poster up in the background about the cookbook.
That's one of the other. That was the first one. We did the Happy Cookbook, and then the editor said, hey, congratulations. Your cookbook was very successful. Now you have to do another one. And it's like, what? We did one. We have all our favorite recipes. And they go, you really have all the recipes? And it's like, well, there are others. And they said, okay, fine. So come up with another idea. So my wife and I were on the first book tour, which would have been about 4 years ago. And we heard from all these people. When we were talking about this cookbook, the Happy Cookbook, they go, these recipes, like here's Dr. Oz's spiced mashed potatoes with pomegranates. His wife gave me that recipe.
The picture, it looks
we
so
love
good.
that. We love the recipes, but they look kind of complicated.
Yeah.
Could you do something faster? So we went from the Happy Cookbook to Happy in a Hurry.
So good. So good.
Then that became like the number one cookbook in the world for a couple of months. And it was in the top 3 for the entire pandemic year. And they said, you know what? You have to do another cookbook. And we said, we did Happy in a Hurry. What's left? And so they said, why don't you and Kathy talk about it? And I said, what do you think? 5 minutes later, she said, the problem with recipes in general is they're not simple.
Yeah.
And so that's where Simply Happy. So we went from Happy Cookbook to Happy in a Hurry to Simply Happy Cookbook. And that's where we are today. Because everybody wants a good meal, but it's got to be simple. It can't be too complicated. Otherwise, the only silver lining with meal preparation is the drink, because we start hitting the sauce pretty early here at the Doocy house. If we're cooking at 5 o'clock, we will pour ourselves a glass of wine as we watch The Five, which we refer to at this house as the happy hour.
Right.
That's what we do.
That's a different spin on the country song. It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
It is. It really is.
But the
well, it sounds like y'all have fun with it, and that should be part of the process.
It's got to be fun.
Shouldn't it?
It's
Instead
gotta
of
be fun.
because if you think, I got to cook dinner, oh gosh, I got to do that. But if you do it together and you make it fun, that can be a real positive.
My problem is my wife will say, okay, I think you need to do this or that. And I'm thinking I wasn't going to do that. So she will just nod and I will make it the way that I thought. And then she'll say, now, wouldn't this have been like 12% better if you would have done this? And of course she is always right. Sure. And that just kills me. She's always right.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you told us the difference in the 3 cookbooks. So we're classic Doocy recipes. We're in a hurry, and now we're
easy and in a hurry.
Now we're simplifying. Nothing complicated. It says everything delicious. Now, when you're talking about now on Cookbook 3, we're now talking about 300 recipes. Okay, by the time you get through 3, so there can't be 300 Doocy recipes, but I'm reading some of the stories here. Like we get to on page 213, Mamie's creamy artichoke chicken. Okay.
Yep.
Now the minute I see that, I'm from the South. You're from Kansas, which it's not the South, but I mean it's also not the North. okay,
Right.
in Northeast. And so it's a little, I think we have more in common probably with people from Kansas than we would say some people from
They
Pennsylvania.
have cars on blocks too, right?
Yeah. And so when I see Mamie, okay,
Yeah.
I think, well, this is his grandmother.
Right.
I mean, but I can't imagine any of our Kansas or Alabama grandmamas cooking artichoke chicken. I thought, well, there must be a story here, and then I read on, and there actually is. My goodness, tell us where this name Mamie came from.
Well, now, interesting. You mentioned when you think of Mamie, you think of a grandma.
I do.
I'm from Abilene, Kansas, which was the boyhood home of Dwight Eisenhower. So I think of Mamie as Mamie Eisenhower, Dwight Eisenhower's wife.
I got it.
Okay. So that's where I thought of Mamie. But what happened was, and with the hardest part is not finding a recipe, because these are all our recipes. The hardest part is actually coming up with a story to explain why that recipe makes us happy.
I got you.
And this, the Mamie artichoke chicken is a combination. One night, Kathy said, I want to make our friend Martha's artichoke dip, which was in the first cookbook. And we only had one can of artichokes. And I said, I was going to make Amy Bear, Brett Baer's wife's artichoke chicken from the second cookbook. So it's like we only have one can of stuff, but we wanted to make two different recipes. So you got Martha and you got Amy. We put it together, and Martha Amy became Mamie. That's where Mamie came from. And I even say there is no Mamie, but it's a combination. So and it's great because you love creamy stuff, and artichokes are pretty good when you get right down to it. And the chicken part is just delicious. So it's a made up name. Hashtag fake news? Not exactly.
Steve, what is it?
Recipe.
What is it like? Was it difficult going to your friends saying, "Hey, will you give me a recipe for a cookbook so I can make money on it"? Was that ever uncomfortable?
Well, you know what? We do donate the money, but we're not here to talk about that. But just asking, and I've asked everybody at Fox for the most part, and they've all given me a recipe through time. Oh,
there's one coming in now.
There's a new one for.
It's pork and beans and hot dogs.
And the fourth book is feeding Rick and Bubba.
Peter Doocy just called.
Hey, Peter.
I was just going to say
Peter, hold on. You're on the radio right now, and you're on a podcast. You're on Rick and Bubba University.
Hey, Peter.
Hey, Peter.
They said hi, Peter.
Hey, guys.
This is where he's like, Dad, what I was calling to tell you about, I can't put on this podcast. What are you doing?
I don't know what you were calling about. Peter, what are you calling about?
I talked to the producer for tomorrow, and
okay.
All good. Yep.
All right, fine. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Talk to you later.
All right, so long.
There he is, off to make another secretary miserable at a press conference.
Well, look, you have to be
press secretary.
You have to be. I mean, I know this is about the cookbook, but we got 45 minutes. We can talk about anything. You have to be really proud of this guy. I mean, he
took the ball and ran with it,
and does an outstanding job. He's his own man. He's got his own thing. And is there anything that feels better than to watch your kids land on their feet and do what they feel called to do and do it well?
Well, when Peter Doocy was a little kid, because my wife actually used to have a show on ESPN back in the olden days. And when we got married, we didn't know nobody ever knows what your kids are going to wind up doing. You just hope that they're happy and healthy and all stay in touch with you. And so growing up, Peter got to come in to work with me a lot, and he got to see how it all works, and it was no big deal. But through college, high school and college, it was like, Peter, TV, radio, broadcasting is complicated, and it's changing.
Yeah.
And in 5 years, it might be completely different. Back then it was cable, and now, of course, it's all about streaming. Here in a couple of years, I think we'll probably all be watching content on a toaster or something like that.
Or your refrigerator.
Yeah. So it's like, Peter, I don't think you should go into any sort of journalism or broadcasting. And he agreed. He was going to go to law school, or he was going to go to.
It's Brian Kilmeade, ladies and gentlemen.
Hang on a second. Hey, AJ.
Yeah, you have 2 seconds?
I don't. I'm doing Rick and Bubba University. Can I call you in a little bit?
Yeah, you're not making anything tomorrow. You're just bringing in the casserole, right?
That's the food stylist is bringing it in.
Gotcha, but you're not demoing or making anything, right? It's basically out of the piece you have it out there with Peter and Hillary.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
All right, so
hang on. All right, hold on to that, Steve. We're going to take a break and come back and hear the rest about Peter. But that's hilarious that is the producer calling. Are you going to make this casserole or somebody bring it in? All right, we'll come back. More with Steve Doocy when Rick and Bubba University, the podcast continues.
This is the Rick and Bubba Show. Watch more at blazetv.com/Rick and Bubba.
Rick and Bubba, Rick and Bubba. All right, Steve Doocy's our guest. We're talking about the third installment in the Happy Cookbook series. This one's called Simply the Happy Cookbook, and these are nothing complicated, everything delicious, another 100 recipes with incredible stories. So Peter Doocy called while we were talking to Steve, and then we start asking about him, and you were telling us the last thing you said was that he should not go into journalism.
And he agreed, and he decided he was going to either go into law or business. And he went to Villanova University, and he was going to be in business school or law school. And in fact, he took all those classes to do it. And then his junior year of college, remember Chris Matthews used to have a show on MSNBC called Hardball.
Right. Yep.
And during the campaign seasons, they would do the Hardball college tour. And their guest one week was John McCain. And they decided that they would tape it. Actually, it was live at Villanova University and just outside Philly. And Peter's political science teacher said, if anybody wants extra credit, go to this TV show and watch John McCain. So Peter went. You can always use extra credit.
Yes,
and
been there.
We're familiar with that.
The producer at one point said, okay, before they got started, okay, Chris Matthews is going to come out. John McCain's going to come out. They're going to sit right there. Does anybody have a question for them? And nobody did. But Peter, realizing what was involved, listened to a couple more people with bad questions.
Yes.
And then Peter said, you know what? I have an idea. So he held up his hand. Hey, I've got a question. And so the producer said, what is it? And Peter told the producer the question, and they go, that's pretty good, but can you make it more interesting? And so Peter thought about it for another 30 seconds, and he said, excuse me, I've made it more interesting. And the producer listened to the question and said, that's good. You will be the second questioner.
Oh, here we go.
So my wife, Kathy, and I were sitting in this house outside New York City, and we're watching it because we knew that he was going to be in the audience. And next thing you know, Peter pops up, and he's asking this question of John McCain. And it was hilarious. It was a funny question. It was about how Hillary Clinton, that was when John McCain was running against Hillary Clinton. And like the day before, Hillary was there in Pennsylvania, and she was drinking whiskey with somebody at a bar. And Peter's question was, Senator, do you think because of unfavorable polling, that's why your opponent Hillary Clinton is hitting the sauce with people here in Pennsylvania? And he started to laugh. And then he goes, and after tonight's show, do you mind joining me for a drink down at Kelly's or something like that? And it was hilarious. And it became the soundbite of that part of the campaign for about a month. That was the funny clip. Nobody realized it was Peter Doocy, my son, even though he said, my name is Peter Doocy. And then it's on YouTube if you wanted to drag that up. But so the next day, my bosses are like, hey, why is Peter on MSNBC? And it's like, he was just at a show. And they go, it was hilarious. It'd be great if he did some stuff for us. And it's like, he's in college and he's going to go to law school or business school. And they said, well, he seems to be a natural.
And you're screaming, please don't drag him into this.
Do it.
Don't drag him into this.
Don't drag him in. Well, next thing you know, the top producers are calling Peter and saying, hey, Peter, that was really good. How would you like to do a town hall? Because actually, that was the campaign where it eventually became John McCain versus Barack Obama. Right. And there were so many kids on college campuses who were motivated to vote for Obama. So it made sense to the producers, let's get somebody on campus who is in that same age group to talk to the kids. So they asked Peter, would you do a town hall? And he said, sure. And they said, where? And they said, at Villanova. So we took a live truck and Peter did a town hall, his own town hall on Fox. And from there on, it was like, hey, when he graduates, he's going to do this, right? And eventually we said to him, if you want to do it, you can. But if it doesn't work out, you can always go to law school or you could always go to business school. And he said, that's the deal. That'll be the deal. And next thing you know, he wound up working at Fox in Chicago and Philadelphia and some different places, and then wound up in the New York bureau. And then now, of course, he's at the White House asking hard questions every day.
I bet we play a clip from Peter almost every day.
Because he just asks normal, everyday questions that all Americans want to know. And It's always fun then to see the press secretary, whoever it may be at the time, start their word salad answer and trying to somehow answer another question. And look, he does a great job. You got to be proud. You trained him well.
We are very proud of him. He, like all the kids, all of our kids are just naturally curious about how things work. We do have a daughter in law enforcement. We got a daughter in marketing, and everybody every day is asking questions about stuff. So it's, my wife and I, so far so good with the kids, just saying.
Well, you see a lot of this inside the cookbooks. I mean, you open up, family memories and old family pictures and things like that. They're very high quality books. Really,
they really are.
Did you ever think, Steve Doocy, how long have you been doing Fox and Friends now?
Only about 26 years.
Only 26. So we're almost the same age. Our show is 28 years and 9 months old.
And he's had to put up with Brian. You've had to put up with me.
That's right. So Steve, you and I at some point need to spend some time together.
I think that.
But,
there are some similarities.
Right. Some people call it therapy. We won't say that. But what I was wondering, did you ever think, with all the things that you guys have been part of, I would like to know the percentage of your email now that revolves around the cookbooks of people saying, now look, this one recipe. I mean, are you, now that you are in Cookbook 3, has this become, I mean, there's this whole, Steve and Kathy Doocy cooking food world now. I mean, and is that now is almost as much as just the normal job?
You're absolutely right, Rick. It is a thing where we write cookbooks, and we'll be out and people will go, hey, Kathy, I made your mom's pot roast with the V8, or Steve, I made your sister Lisa's potatoes. It was hilarious. About a year ago, I got a text from somebody that said, hey, Paula Deen is cooking your recipes on her show. And it's like, great. What? And we looked at it, and indeed, she had a cookbook propped up behind her, and she was reading out of it. And so, Paula Deen, who we all love, and in fact works at Fox Nation as well. But it was gratifying to think that somebody else who writes a cookbook, somebody at that level, it's like Steven Spielberg saying, "Hey, I really like your home movies."
Right? So yeah, exactly.
It was great that she liked our potatoes, Lisa's luscious, legit, creamy potatoes, or something. I think that was the name of it.
Yeah, you could feel this has probably built its own little empire, own little club, because people love to talk about food. Look, we have to be the only country in the world that there's very successful shows that have run for years, and they involve people just cooking for us, and we enjoy it. And we're not trying to jump on this wagon because Steve, that's not our nature to try to. But the next one may be Simply Happy, or Happy Cookbook. Steve and Kathy feed Rick and Bubba, that kind of thing.
Now we had a cookbook one time.
But you're absolutely right. I mean, you guys. I do a 3-hour-a-day show. Your show is for how many hours?
Well, if you count the kickoff hour, which Bubba and I don't participate in because we could not make a commitment to get
up any earlier than I do.
So the rest of the team does an hour. So they do 5, we do 4.
Well, see, exactly. And so when you think about your 3 or 4 hour show, you talk about everything in the world.
Oh, yes.
Politics, news, some event that's going on. And the people at home can relate to a lot of it. But the one thing everybody can relate to is food, because whoever you are, if you're lucky, you get 3 meals a day. And a lot of the time you're thinking about, well, what am I going to make? And so it's kind of that celebration of food that we realize, if it's one thing to decide, I'm going to make a fried chicken tonight. In fact, I just had fried chicken leftovers for lunch.
Oh, man.
It's one thing to say, I'm going to make that recipe, but it's something else to say. And we did this with the last cookbook. It's like, okay, if we could make a fried chicken recipe, how would we make it so it is the best fried chicken we've ever had? And so we added some stuff to different things. Peter Doocy was on Fox and Friends 2 days ago. He's going to be on again tomorrow. And he was talking about stuff in the cookbook. And there is one recipe that he had told me about at a restaurant next door to where he lives in Washington. He said, you'll never believe it. It's a buffalo chicken French toast sandwich.
No.
And I thought, I love buffalo chicken. And I love French toast.
But together?
You put it together. You take a buffalo chicken patty, you put a piece of French toast on each side of it. Before you put the French toast on, though, you butter
of course
the inside with syrup, and you put some pickles in there.
No.
And I tell you guys, it literally takes 5 minutes to make, and it is the most savory, delicious, weird combination of things that are fantastic. And it's just one of those things. When I make that, it's like, I'm really kind of looking forward to having that. And that's what you want. You don't want it to be drudgery. You want to kind of look forward to something. Life is hard enough. We need to look forward to something. And for a lot of us, if you can make one meal happy, you're doing okay.
All right, we're going to come back. I don't even know how I can get through this next commercial thinking about what he just presented to us, French toast and buffalo chicken all together.
I'm trying to imagine how that's going to work out.
I didn't know
I'm hungry.
I didn't realize that there had been enough grace in my life for me to live long enough to hear that. So we'll come back. We'll talk more with Steve Doocy when Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, continues. Bubba, let's face it. We don't like thinking we have to compromise our principles to fulfill a need in our life, with a product. You think, all right, I've got to have cell service. We all do it. We're living in this world now. I got to have a cell phone.
Yep.
And I've got to have service. And all these companies are out here and they're supporting all these things I don't agree with, but what other choice do I have? Well, the good news is if you want a choice when it comes to your phone, Patriot Mobile is the only Christian conservative mobile phone provider and a force for conservative values. But guess what? They are available to you right now. If you want to know what's the left's real plan is for your kids, and just look at the reaction you see out there when Patriot Mobile started talking about this and people going after them, which tells you everything you need to know. Look, they take a portion of your bill, and you know what they do? They fund conservative causes and candidates who believe in the sanctity of life, freedom of speech, the Second Amendment, and guess what? They're winning. And with the midterms coming up, Patriot Mobile has affordable plans for you, your family, even your business. They offer the same nationwide coverage as the major carriers because they use multiple major networks. Plus, you're supporting conservative values with every call. There's a change.
There you go.
So here's the call to action, patriotmobile.com/Rick Bubba. or call 972-PATRIOT. We'll get you free activation with the offer code RickBubba. Special discounts also available for the veterans who have served our country. That's, again, patriotmobile.com/RickBubba. You do have a choice. Call 972-PATRIOT. Steve Doocy, our guest on Rick and Bubba University, the podcast. We're talking about
The Deuce is Loose.
The Deuce is Loose, and we're talking about delicious food. Here is cookbook number 3 in the our Happy Cookbook series. This one is delicious recipes that aren't complicated. Look at that.
Now, Rick, that is the day that that's Peter with his wife, Hillary Vaughn. You see her on TV all the time.
Oh, sure.
That's when he took me to that place near his house where we had the buffalo chicken French toast sandwiches. And they were so, you know how you go out and you eat something and you say, that was so good. I wish we could make it at home. What my wife, Kathy, and I have done is we just try to reverse engineer stuff and try to figure out how to get it to taste the way
Rick,
they made it at the restaurant.
How much fun would that be?
Sometimes
re-engineer food.
Just take food and say, you know what it is?
Golly.
It reminds me of
I feel like Pavlov's dog now. I'm going to have to clean up the drool.
Do y'all remember Lee Majors in the $6 Million Man?
Oh, yeah.
We can make him better than he was.
Right, exactly.
And here's the Doocies. They're saying, we like this dish, but we could make it even better. Let's play.
Okay, let me explain. I'll give you a couple of the foods that we take a food and then we made it better. Okay, so my wife told me when we were coming up with this recipe, her first word was sweet roll, or maybe that's 2 words. And so we were coming up with, we wanted to make for breakfast a cinnamon roll that was just different, because we go to a place that has this, it's a donut shop, and they have a donut and they will put a piece of bacon on top.
And good for them.
And it's fantastic. But it's just a donut with a piece of bacon on top.
Understood.
So we were thinking, how do we do something where we build the bacon inside? And so we came up with this maple bacon and cream cheese cinnamon roll. And you know how you buy one of those tubes in the grocery store of cinnamon rolls, then rather than just put it on a baking sheet, you unroll it. And then along the way, you put 2 pieces of bacon that you've already kind of pre-cooked. And then you roll it up, you bake it to perfection. And then when it's cooled down, you put this maple cream cheese stuff on it. And that's when your eyes just roll around to the back of your head. It's like, why didn't I ever think of that before? It's a little more complicated than just, hitting the roll on the side of the counter and baking it. But it's worth it because it takes 5 minutes. And it's like, why don't I always do that? I'm hoping that when I go to heaven, that's in the cafeteria line, because I could eat that every day.
Rick, my body, I'm having a physical response to this podcast that I'm not used to having when we talk about Bigfoot and flying saucers.
Yeah, I feel bad for our producer, Chris Adler, because I'm going to eat this camera.
Yeah,
and
I just had my gallbladder out, and my body's trying to squeeze something in there, and I don't know what it is, but it's a very strange feeling.
I mean, this is, and what I love about it. Please tell me, and I'm going to just. I bet I'm getting ahead of myself.
Go ahead.
But just tell us the truth, okay? And we all need to do better, and we certainly need to do these things in moderation. You're not going to put out a healthy cookbook, are you? I mean, are y'all not going? Are y'all planning on doing a low calorie version at some point? Because we won't be interviewing you for that one.
When the publisher said you got to come up with another cookbook. I said, and it's got to have happy in the title.
Yeah.
And I said to my wife, Kathy, I said, how about happy and healthy or healthy, happy? And she goes, no. I said, why? It kind of works. It's 2 H's. And she goes, there's a simple reason. Nobody wants to eat healthy food.
Right.
There it is.
Right. We'd rather eat good food that happens to be healthy.
We eat healthy food when we have to, not because we want to.
Steve, I think a good cookbook would be campfire recipes.
Oh.
When you're out camping and you don't have all the fancy stuff. That's when you have baked beans and weenies, that kind of thing.
Yeah, actually, there are a couple of recipes in this cookbook that are based on when I was a Boy Scout. And one of them was for breakfast, when we would go out and camp in rural Kansas back in the 60s. I remember breakfast was one year, it was you take some cold oatmeal, or you take oatmeal, instant oatmeal, and you put it in a cup and you pour some milk on it and some raisins. And it wasn't cooked. And it's like,
what are we doing?
But in the 50 years since,
man,
overnight oats have become a thing. So I took the idea behind, you put the oats in the bottom of a mason jar, then you put in some almond milk, and you put in some chia seeds. We put a little Nutella in there, but the key is you also put, I think it's 1 teaspoon of instant coffee flakes in there. So, and you mix it all up. And we also throw some craisins in there. You mix it all up, and we call it, because it's got coffee in it, we call it Jolt in a jar. And after it's sat in the refrigerator for like 6 hours, it's completely creamy and delicious. And because of the Nutella, the hazelnut spread, it's off the chart good. And it's like, man, I wish I could have gotten a merit badge in this, because this is delicious.
That's page 58. And
Jolt in a jar.
Yeah, blueberries and strawberries are optional. You could throw those in if you wanted to. And
if you want to be healthy, it's a superfood.
Yeah, and you're right. It was 1 teaspoon of the coffee. So you hit that right.
Peter, are you and Kathy going to be out touring with this book too, like you have some of the others, or?
You know what? We are not, because we're just going to all do it on TV. COVID's still not completely over. And for anybody who knows my wife's story, the way we got started with the cookbooks was, it starts as a bummer, but we were going to go to Florida, and we wanted to get a new prescription for our sunglasses. And we went to the eye doctor, and my doctor said, you know what, your prescription is about the same. Kathy was being examined by the doctor with her head in that thing where you look at all this stuff.
Yeah.
And the guy goes, can you come back in 3 months? And it's like, why?
Yeah.
And he said, it's absolutely probably not anything, but it's just a little freckle in the back of your eye. And it's like, what does that mean? And they go, it's not going to mean anything. Just come back and we'll be careful. Just come back. Millions of people have that. We went back 3 months later, and the doctor said, you know what? Can you go and see our friend, the retina specialist across town? And we said, right now? He said, yeah. And it's like, well, it's blizzarding outside. And they go, yeah, we know, but we think you should just go see it, the guy, just to make sure you're okay. And so we drove across in a blizzard. It was 2 miles, and it took 45 minutes. We got there. The guy looked in her eye and said, oh, okay. It's probably nothing.
Oh, nothing.
But
Yeah.
Can you go to Philadelphia? And we said, sure. When? And he goes, right now. And it was 5 o'clock during a blizzard. And we said, we can't. And so we went the next morning. Long story short, she goes to the Wills Eye Hospital in Philadelphia, one of the greatest hospitals in the world for eyes. And the doctor said, Kathy, you have cancer in your eye.
Oh, wow.
Which we'd never heard of. She said, you've got cancer, but I will save your life. And she did. She did a radioactive treatment where she put something about the size of a dime. They sewed it into the side of her eye.
Hello.
And then they sewed her eye shut for 5 days. And one of those 5 days, it's the middle of the night. And when you're going through cancer treatment, you don't know what's going to happen. And she's thinking to herself, what if this doesn't work? And she decided she was going to start writing down the recipes for the kids. Oh,
wow.
Just in case. So they would always have the recipes that made them happy.
Wow.
And that's how this whole 3 cookbook extravaganza got started. And since then, we ran a story 2 days ago about how Kathy was diagnosed. And somewhere, I want to say in Michigan, when she described it 2 years ago, a guy in Michigan by the name of Reverend Terry Keeney saw that and he goes, you know, what Kathy's got sounds exactly like what my friend Vicky Sonnenberg was just diagnosed with. And so he called Vicky and said, find the Kathy Doocy story on Fox and Friends on the internet and watch it, because I think that's what you got.
Oh boy.
And you need to do it right now, because Vicky had seen a doctor, and the treatment for her eye cancer was they were going to take her whole eyeball out.
Wow.
And so Vicky found Kathy's story online, watched it, talked to her doctor. You know, maybe I shouldn't have my eye taken out. I think I'd like to do what Kathy Doocy did with the radiation. Mm-hmm. The doctor said, okay. And in fact, the doctor had been trained by Kathy's doctor from Philadelphia. And I just talked to her 2 days ago. They were able to save her eye.
How about that?
And they saved her life. And her vision is actually better. So, wow. You know, it's one of those things where by telling a story, it's a cookbook, but it saves somebody's life, which is amazing. And the reason I even went down that road was because you had asked about the book tour. Kathy still has some complications where they said, you know, you really can't get COVID.
Right.
So if you can stay away from crowds. So that's why she is not on the book tour.
Oh, yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
But I'm actually going to be in Florida next week for a secret appearance. And I got a feeling we'll do something with the book.
Okay. We're going to come back. We'll finish up our time together with Steve Doocy when Rick and Bubba University, the podcast, continues. Well, Bubba, you and I have talked about something that men normally don't talk about a lot, and that is underwear. Most of us believe
I love my underwear.
Once we become, you know, a young adult, we're assigned our underwear, and no matter how our weight fluctuates, we wear that same underwear the rest of our lives.
Well, we don't like spending a lot of time on it, honestly.
No. But then we were introduced with Tommy John, and I'm wearing a pair right now.
I am too.
And they are extreme. That may be TMI, but they're very comfortable. Let's just call it. And they're designed the way that God made us. We're men and women are equal, but they're not the same.
Yeah, we got our own curve.
We do. Well, for you and me, the word curve means road hazard. But I will say this: they do have things for women too. But Bubba and I were assigned to talk about the men's underwear, because I'm going to tell you this: they do not have customers; they have fans, and this is the guarantee. Listen to us, guys. The underwear from Tommy John is so comfortable. They even say if it's not the best pair of underwear that you've ever had, then they will let you have it for free. The way they have built them, no non-rolling waistband. They don't ride up on our legs, okay? And of course they've got the horizontal, quick. I'm making a run, and here on our show now we have to run so far to the restroom. We need to be able to for this to all work.
Oh,
smoothly.
Absolutely. Yeah, you better be ready.
So and they also keep you cool when it's hot and you don't want to be miserable. So why don't you go get yours now so you can be a fan too? TommyJohn.com/RickBubba for 20% off the first order. 20% off at TommyJohn.com/RickBubba. Talking to Steve Doocy, wrapping up our last segment on another Rick and Bubba University, the podcast. We're talking about a lot of things, but we're mainly talking about the latest cookbook has come out that Steve and his wife Kathy have put together. You can go to simplyhappycookbook.com and guess what, Bubba? Get an autographed copy.
There you go.
While they last.
Go in with Steve, have it signed right to you.
Right. This simplyhappycookbook.com. And this latest one is dealing with things that are not complicated but are delicious, and we've got 100 brand new recipes. So, Steve, the success of these cookbooks are through the roof. And Bubba mentioned he and I did one many moons ago with our wives that was not as extensive as this. We even had people saying, the cookbook, it should have more recipes, and it really just had a lot of commentary for Bubba and I, a few recipes, but it's really our commentary about food. And they're like, can y'all talk less about the food and maybe get your wives to put more recipes in? And we've never followed up on that, and why do we need to? Because you've covered it.
I appreciate that because, my wife is the cook and so she will tell me how to make it. And then I will make it so that I can write down how to do it. So our book is not just recipes, 100 delicious, simple recipes, but also there's a story with everything. Because as we know at our house, generally one person cooks and the other person reads. And so it's not only a cookbook, but it's also a family memoir. Like in this one, and you were talking about White House correspondent Peter Doocy earlier, who grew up, actually, when he was a little boy, this was his toy room.
Oh, really? Right there?
Got his trophies back there.
They kept the toys right back there. Now it's just got my empties. So it's we've repurposed it. But because it's a family memoir, we tell different stories. And one of the stories, and I'm not going to give you the complete answer because people should get the book to read it because it's hilarious. But before Peter was born, you know how with your first kid, you really want that name to say something about you?
Yeah.
And back in when Peter was born in the late 87, one of Kathy's friends from her New York days, a very famous movie star, they were naming their children after, who was a friend of Kathy's. They were naming their kids after figures in literary history. And it's like, how very cool is that? And they had some very unique names. So we wanted to come up with a very unique name. And after, Kathy wasn't even pregnant at that point, and we finally settled on a name, which I am not going to tell you. It's in the book, but I will simply describe it as the name of a town in Tennessee. We were going to name him after a town in Tennessee, and we didn't, although it still would have been a unique name. I would love to hear that name called out in the White House press briefing room.
Oh, yes.
But the reason we didn't name Peter that name is because I wanted to run it by my mother. And once she stopped laughing, she accused me of day drinking. So now, we came up with something else.
Yeah. So, but we shouldn't read anything into why this town in Tennessee was being considered, should we?
No.
Okay.
It had nothing to do with Tennessee, but it was a name.
Right.
Not going to say any more because I would reveal something, but there was part of the zeitgeist that year in 87 involved that name, which was not only a name of a town in Tennessee, but was also something distinctive.
Okay.
It's a cliffhanger.
Wow, this is makes you
it makes you want to do a quick Google search, doesn't it?
Well, it's not. I'm only revealing this for the first time. It will. I've written a column. It's in the cookbook. If you go to your Barnes and Noble, actually go to Books A Million. There in Birmingham, one of my favorite bookstores in the whole wide world. They've got it, and it's in the first 25 pages. The answer.
Okay.
But I will also reveal it in a column that will be published on FoxNews.com. So you know what? You're probably right, Bubba. If you Google it, you'll see what the answer is.
Steve, let me ask you this.
It is a town in Tennessee.
It will veer off the cookbook just a little bit. Fox and Friends, you said you've been doing that 26 years. How much longer do you think you'll be doing that?
Well, it's like you guys. I'm sure people say that to you all the time. But as long as you are having fun doing it, and as long as the hours don't bother you and people go, well, do you really want to get up at 3:00 in the morning for another 5 years or something like that?
Right.
And I will simply respond, look, most of America gets up at 3:00 in the morning, but that is just to pee.
That's right.
I just decide to get up and go to work. That's it.
Yeah.
No different.
Yeah. No different at all. Yeah. We ask that all the time, and my answer, as Bubba's heard it, has always been the same. As long as I can mentally and physically still do it, and anyone cares. If those three things are in play, then because we have said one of the saddest things that can happen is when the audience knows the show is over before you do.
Kind of like with our president.
Right. Right. Well, Steve, we sure have enjoyed our time together. We really have, and thanks for taking time. Those of you that may not know, if you haven't heard Steve's interview on the Big Show, he actually did the Big Show and did the podcast this week. So thanks for
Steve. Thank you so much.
Thanks for spending that much time with us, buddy.
I love you guys. Thank you very much, Rick and Bubba, and Speedy, who's actually eating recipes now out of the cookbook.
He really is. Get an autographed copy by going to simplyhappycookbook.com. The Simply Happy Cookbook is available right now by Steve and Kathy Doocy, wherever books are sold. And thank you all for being with us for this edition of Rick and Bubba University, the podcast.